it's maintenance night on our crush here. We're getting ready. We got a 5,000 wind coming up this next Saturday night. And I hadn't been through this. And we've done some videos, you know, when you've gone through all the different videos in dirt race life, like I'm doing valve lash, changing valve springs, doing different things. But I'm gonna do a video here and just going through the maintenance, just the basic stuff. So first thing I wanted to show right quick, I never did re-grease or clean this off or anything. I just had a light coating of grease on it that kind of tells me how well my filter's doing. Now the grease doesn't actually stop dirt from coming in. It's just if dirt is coming in, that coating of grease is going to show you that dirt is being ingested by your engine, because it's going to catch some of it as the air is going across. That's all it's doing. It's an indicator. That's it. Because I've had a couple people ask me about that. It's like, how does that actually stop the dirt? Well, it doesn't stop the dirt. It just tells you by putting a thin coat of grease on this inside here, it's just telling you that that dirt is in the air that's going into it. 3 times original grease, and wipe my finger off here and get that. And that is still just red grease. That looks great. That looks great. So that is working fine. Not the cheapest filter. I think this thing was $99, but it looks great. I'm just using K&N oil on it, and the reason, Walker has their own oil, but I have like a gallon jug of K&N that I bought years ago. I've been using that same gallon jug for like 10 years now. I don't know, the gallon that might have been overkill. But anyway, so I just put it in a small bottle like this right here. So the K&Ns that I've run, I've always tried to like wash them every 3 races. I've always had this routine of I always re-oil them every time I run them, and then like wash them every 3rd time that I run them. And on this Walker, I'm going to go with the same plan. I want to show y'all how I wash these oil filters out. So let's do that. I use a wheelbarrow that'll hold water, but you could use a wash tub or anything that'll hold water. You know, you could use a sink if you've got one of those deep basin sinks. It doesn't matter. I just use the wheelbarrow. I use a degreaser. I don't think you need to get the K&N or the Walker cleaning fluid. You just need degreaser. What I use is the LA's Totally Awesome, like you can get at the Dollar Tree. And you can get it in the gallon jugs at Walmart or something, or you can get it in like these little pints like this from the Dollar Tree for like $1. I think it's $1.25 now. But anyway, I just use it, and I use a lot of it because I'm going to run water in here. And this is all I do. But it does take degreaser. That oil filter oil, that is like the serious, like vegetable grease type oil. And if you don't use a degreaser, you will not break it loose. And if you don't break it loose, you're not going to break the dirt loose. So that's why I make sure I use a degreaser. You could use like castor oil super clean. I tried using the Simple Green before, and it just didn't have it just didn't seem to do it. The Simple Green just didn't seem to, I don't know, have enough it says it's a degreaser, but like I said, the LA's Totally Awesome, like that stuff right there, and you saw I put like a whole pint, and I'm probably going to run like 2 or 3 gallons of water in here, and I let this thing soak, and that's the way I do it. Now, what I don't do is I do not spray water through it, because it pushes those cotton fibers open and it makes holes in it. You may not see the holes, but it makes holes in it. So I just run the water in it until it gets over the top of the level, and then I'll let it soak, and I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna show y'all how that I get all of the dirt loose from it. I may have to roll this wheelbarrow inside because I'm definitely running out of light. But anyway, let me get it soaking for right now, and then we'll go in there and we'll start working on the spark plugs, oil change, something. Boy, this car is ready for a new body. It is ready, ready, ready. We're gonna make it through the end of this season. Hopefully make a lot better shaped body next season. This thing, it could stand to be a lot prettier than what it is. There we go. Okay, let's put it on lift. Get up there out of the way. All right, let's get it. cheater tube on this. It's always an awkward angle to get some leverage on it. There we go. I don't tighten them up this tight. It just seems like that they just tighten up this tight on their own after you run them. I mean, I tighten it up. And I use a wrench and tighten it. I don't just hand tighten bracing filters, but boy, that rubber O-ring on that darn wicks, it just seems like it just seizes. It doesn't matter, you oil it. Maybe I need to start putting grease on them instead of oil. I always just rub some fresh oil on them, but you seen I had to get a cheater bar on that one. Come here, Betsy. Oh boy, that looks good. Oh, look like new money coming out of that thing. That's what I like to see. That's what I like to see. Now I want to, yep. That's what I like to see. Clean that off right around there. Make sure when y'all are changing your oil to take a rag and clean this real good. You got to put that oil filter up there and you can bump that rubber gasket against the edge and pick up dirt really easy. So wipe it all off really good. That way you don't bump against something and contaminate it before you even got going good. There. Make sure that's tight. Yep, that's good. All right. That's good. Let's get this turning like that. There it goes. There we go. Yep, looks good. See anything weird in there? Nope. Nope, that looks good. All right. I think this engine's gonna be a good one. We've got, I don't know, how many races we got on this engine, y'all? Maybe 10? I mean, every race we've had on this engine has been on the channel. I think we've run it about 10 times. It seems to be a good one. Seems to be doing good. I'm gonna let this drain, put the plug back in it. We'll throw some oil in this thing, throw a filter on it. Y'all, I run the Wix 51061R oil filter. This is the one that I normally run. This is the tall oil filter for the small block Chevrolet, and the R on it is for racing. And then they make this a 51061 that's not an R. And the difference between them is if it has the R, it's a 60 micron filtering element. And if it doesn't have the R, that's the regular one, and it's a 25 micron filtering element. Okay, so what am I talking about when I say 25 microns versus 60? Well, micron is a very minor measurement. It's very small, smaller than a human hair. And the 25 microns is the distance across between the filter medium that a piece of debris could go through. So the smaller that number is, the tighter the filter is as far as stopping dirt and stuff. But the trade-off is the more head pressure that you're going to have of oil trying to push through the oil filter, okay? And so, like on a 25 micron filter, you're gonna have a lot more filtering capability here in the oil filter as far as it stopping really fine particles, but you're gonna have a lot of head pressure on the oil pump itself. You're gonna have a lot more oil that is gonna bypass one of two places. It's either gonna bypass directly at the oil filter adapter itself, because you've got a spring-loaded bypass right there, and it can bypass at the oil pump itself. And either way, what you're doing is you're recirculating this oil, okay? And so depending on the weight of your oil and the RPM you run, you could be creating more heat in your oil by sitting there, you know, having all this head pressure constantly circulating like that. Versus a 60, now the 60 is going to let more oil be able to, its flow rate through the oil filter is going to be a lot higher, but it's going to let a lot more material go through the oil filter and go right on through and through your bearings and everything. I run a high volume oil pump, but I don't run a high pressure. So like I know that, you know, somewhere between 60 and 80 pounds of oil on the oil pump itself, if it doesn't go through the filter, it's just going to bypass, you know, around and cycle in the oil pump itself. And so like I run the 60, but I'm changing my oil. Where I was, the jury's been out on this. At one time, I was running 3 races, changing my oil filter, and then running 3 more and changing the oil and filter. On this engine, I put so much into this engine, I'm like, spend a little more money, Jay. So I'm actually changing the oil and filter just every 3 races. But my rule of thumb on this is that if you're going to run the racing oil filter, you should be changing your oil frequently. I've got a friend of mine, David Cove, and like when he runs his engine, he will change the oil every time he runs the engine. I just can't afford to do that. I think that somewhere around 3 races at least, I can see some contamination in the oil, some change in the color somewhere, and it's like, so I'm changing it every 3 races. I can't see myself changing more often than that. As far as running a 25 micron oil filter, if you've got an engine that you're running and like you're going to run a season on the oil, or you're going to run like 10 races on the oil or something, I definitely would probably be running the 25 micron oil filter, not the 60. I think if you're running one that's the racing filter, you need to be changing it regular. Okay, that's all I got to say on racing filters. Let's put it on. As far as the racing oil goes, I run the Valvoline VR1. The weight I run in this engine, my other engine, is the 20W50. And the reason I'm using the Valvoline VR1 is because it's good racing oil. There's nothing wrong with it. Price-wise, it's probably the most economical. The main thing on the racing oil is you've got to have the zinc. If you're running a flat tappet, you know, either a hydraulic or solid cam, you know, if you don't have a roller cam, then you've got to have the zinc. There is no oil on the shelf that has got the zinc in it anymore, y'all. And that includes Rotella. You know, people say, oh, run the diesel oil, run the 15W40 Rotella, the T4. Folks, they took the zinc out of that oil as well. The zinc's been took out of all the oils because of the catalytic converters, and the catalytic converters and reburners and stuff, they're on the diesels now, and they took all the zinc out of everything. So you can run other off-the-shelf oils. And I have too. I've run like the Rotella, and what I was doing was I was buying the Comp Cam's break-in additive that was a zinc additive, and like when I would run regular oil, I would put that pint of the break-in additive in it, and I did that at one time. I couldn't tell the difference. Everything was fine. I've never killed a cam from oil. I've killed some cams because I broke crankshafts and shoved them up through them, but I've never killed a cam just as far as like going flat. Just been lucky about that. It can happen to anybody, but I've been lucky over the years with that. But you got to make sure the zinc's in there. You need like that 1,500 parts per million zinc. And however you got to do it, it doesn't matter whether the racing oil comes with it or if you've got a brand of oil that you like and you're just putting additive in it. To me, I don't think it matters if you're changing your oil often. Now, if you're planning on running for like a season on the same oil, you know, you might want to go with racing oil. There may be more to it, you know, that makes it worth it. Me, you know, like I said, I'm changing it out. So that's what I do. And I run these pans, I run a half quart low. So for example, the 51061 filter will hold a quart of oil. That Moroso pan is a 7-quart pan. And I have got 7.5 quarts in this engine instead of 8. And that's pretty normal for me to do that. So like that's how I do it. That's pretty normal operating procedure for me. I'll run like that. Like there's plenty of oil in the pan, no issues or whatever. But I've got a cheap Claimer kick-out pan as well. And I do the same thing. I run it like a half a quart low. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just saying, like, you know, I do that. Well, the air filter's been soaking for about an hour, so it should be ready for us to get it washed on out. So let's go knock that out. Okay, so I put the degreaser in here, put enough water in here for this thing to be completely covered. I hadn't sloshed or anything, and look, you see all the oil all over the surface. And so It's ready to go. It's been soaking about an hour. And then this is what I do. I do not sit here and force water through it. I do like this right here. I'm just sitting here agitating it. And I will sit here and I will do this for about, I don't know, 10 minutes until I'm just absolutely exhausted. But, not like crazy amounts. But, yeah, probably between 5 and 10 minutes. I will just sit here and I'm just turning. And I promise you this works. So after I think I've gotten all the dirt I can get loose from it, I'll just dump this water out. I'll run clean water in here. I'll do it for a couple of minutes in clean water, make sure I don't have any more dirt coming out of it or anything. If I do, I'll dump that water because I want to have clean water. When I get done here, I don't want to leave dirt laying in it. So if I see a little more dirt or something, I'll dump that out, put some more clean water in it, and just until it's all clean water, it's staying clean water, and I just take and swing it around, sling the water, the extra water out of it. I don't blow it out with a blowgun or nothing like that. Usually what I do is I will sit this thing on a chair outside on the patio or something, and I will let it dry, and I always make sure I do this at least an extra day before I race. I don't do this the night before I'm gonna race because it won't be completely dry like in just 12 or 16 hours. This thing needs that extra day. So it's Tuesday night and we're racing next Saturday. So I will be done with this tonight, and tomorrow evening, if it feels damp or if I swing it, if I see any water spray on the floor or anything, I'll wait another night before I start oiling it. Regardless, we're putting this video together, so you're gonna see all of it in one shot. But that's what's really going on, y'all. So I'm changing the spark plugs out, and I'm gonna check the overhead. Run the valve lash as well on this engine. And I've run this engine, I think, 3 races since I've set the valve lash, but the spark plugs is the ones that I started the engine out on. And I'm gonna pull them out because that stumble that I've had picking up the throttle, I think it is just low time. I think maybe the engine's wanting more time than what I realized. And I'm not familiar with the 85, and a couple of different people have told me yeah, E85 wants more time. So I'm gonna turn the time up, and that may solve it, but I wanna make sure, these dudes are tight. I wanna make sure I got a good fresh set of plugs in it, because when we first started out with this engine, Lord knows I drowned them several times. I'm gonna look at them, and they're all just light brown. They look really good. Of course, you gotta remember, it's been running around here in the shop and stuff, and so it's been plenty wet running as the last time it was run. So you really can't go by that, but there's no little specks, there's no aluminum, there's no deposits. There's still things you can look for. You see stuff like that on, especially if you see it on one cylinder. Ooh, that's a sign. That's a sign, stop racing and investigate. You might save an engine. So anyway, I'm gonna get these spark plugs out right quick, and that is gonna make my life a lot easier running the overhead, because I can just grab the fan blades and turn the engine through as I'm doing these. I want to show that process right quick. It's really not that hard. The way I do it, to me, seems to be the easiest way to do it. So get these out and make sure that none of them got something silly going on, nothing like that. And then we'll run the overhead and then put the new plugs in, gap them out, do all that. So on the next car that I build, I wasn't quite like I needed to be on this one. I really like how I did these 2 towers on the front over the shock position here. I like that. I like my crossbar right here. But on the next one, where they cross each other, this angle, I need to be either a little bit more above these valve covers. I need to be a little bit more rearward. Everything worked out right when I mocked it up, but then in practice, and when I switched out to this engine, the height of the head itself, as far as the rails and everything, buddy, it's tight. And that's just, you learn and you evolve. On the next one, I like this design, how I did it. I don't want it to be a bolt-on piece, but it needs to be a little different than this. Come here, Betsy. You booger bear. I glue the gasket into the cover, but that one is well stuck. Oh, there it goes. I don't want it to break loose with half the gasket stuck to the head, you know. Make sure it all, yep, it all stayed with the cover. But yeah, see, I have to really kind of finagle it around. It's like just a certain way that it'll slide in and out. And of course, if you're in a rush at the track, that's drama. So I think I have to do it like that right there. There it is. So yeah, that's a little bit too tight. But, you know, you build, you learn. I cut that a little bit too close. When I'm running valve lash, I like to run through them just by the firing order. 1, 8, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 2. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. If you're on a hydraulic cam, you know, you're gonna have preload in your rocker arms all the time. So it can be a little bit difficult unless you're just actually just walking the engine through and seeing the valves work to figure out whether on number 1, you know, you're actually up on your compression stroke for it to fire, or are you on the exhaust and intake stroke where that the cylinders, you know, the pistons back up, but it's your valve overlap. And on a hydraulic cam with hydraulic lifters, you know, the easiest thing to do if you're, you know, up on it and you can't see it walking it through, you can't tell, is just to pop the distributor cap off and see if your rotor button, is pointed towards number 1, then you know you're on it for the firing stroke. If it's pointed exactly opposite, you need to go 1 whole revolution to bring the rotor button around. On a solid cam, I don't have to do that. Not after I've initially set up the engine and dropped the distributor in. I don't have to do it anymore because I can take and like I'm up on my number 1, you know, I looked on my balancer there and I'm up on 0, and then my feeler gauge right here for my valve lash that I've set, I've got clearance. And if I was on my overlap, where I come back around, where the piston comes back up, pushing the exhaust out, pulling the intake in, if I was on that stroke, I would not have this lash right here. So I don't have to pop the distributor loose. But if you have like any concerns about it, or you're not sure, or you're on a hydraulic lifter, you know, where you've got some preload in it in the lash, then, you know, you can just pop the distributor loose, but otherwise this works. So I know I'm on the right cycle. So we'll just do 1 together. Now I'm gonna set these to 18 thousandths cold. I think the cam card calls for like 17 hot. I'm gonna set them to 18 cold. They're gonna tighten up very little because it's iron heads, you know, iron block, everything. So there's not a whole lot of movement in that valve train. But I'm gonna set them to 18 cold. And the 18 slides in really easy. All right, I've got a 20 here on no-go. I want to make sure that this 20 does not slide in. Now I don't go just 1,000 because you can about slide, like if I'm only 1,000ths thicker, like it'll still slide in. It's just gonna slide in tight. And to me, that starts getting confusing and you start chasing the ghost because you're tightening it back down and it's impossible to be that perfect. So my go, no go is always the number I'm after and then 2,000ths larger that I wanna make sure doesn't go. And so when I'm looking at this, the 20 won't go on this one. Yeah, it'll almost go. I have to kind of push it in, but it'll go. And it'll go easy on that one. Now, what would I be looking for as far as a failure, an indication like, hey, something's wrong? Something wrong would be like there's a lot. Like, you know, in other words, if I slid this in and it was like floppy loose, you know, I'm okay like that. I've got contact on it. And even on this one, you know, I'm feeling contact. I can tell there's lots of room, but like it's just 1 or 2 extra thousand. If you start having 5 or 10 extra thousandths of gap, like I could take and like stick a 25 in there or a 26 instead of, like I know it had originally set it at 18, you need to start looking for a problem. You could possibly, you know, have something going on with your lift or have something going on with your cam. You need to investigate further. Like that 25 absolutely is not going in there, okay? And so just if you had a ton of slop, you know, look at it from that standpoint because right now is when you can catch a big problem before it gets away from you. All right? Anyway, so both of these, all I'm going to do is I'm going to crack them loose. So this is poly locks. All right? So pop that one loose. Pop this one loose. When you tighten poly locks back down, you'll gain a little bit of clearance back. So like, for example, when you because what it is, it's a set screw in the middle of it. So when I put this in, if I just take and turn that until it stopped. All right, so let me show you here. So I put that 18 in right there, and I turned that until that stopped. I didn't push it against it, but so that's like tight right now. Like it's tight in there. But when I tighten the poly lock back down on it, it's gonna create some clearance because it's gonna pull that nut back a little bit. So like, I'm gonna do that. And then now, it's like it loosened it up slightly. So now that 18 slides in. Let's see if that 20 will go. That 20 will not go, okay? So that's the way I do this. Same deal on this one right here. Loosen it up. I'm gonna drop it in. Then let me show y'all, it's hard to show this on film, but like I'm just taking and I'm just flopping it down on it. I'm not really pushing against it, all right? And so did you see how that happened? Watch this, let me show you. All right, watch. Drop that down against it and it's holding it, and then watch me pull it out. You see what happened there? So it is literally sitting against the feeler gauge. Now it can be a little more difficult if your poly locks are really bound tight, or if you're using your stop nuts. It's not going to be this easy. It's easy with a really good set of ARP quality poly locks or something. But anyway, so there I am, dropped against it, and then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to hold the wrench in place and I'm going to lock it down like that right there. All right, and so then I'm going to just take. Yep, and so that'll move real easy. Definitely was in solid contact, and that 20 will not go. So I consider the valve lash to be set on those, and then I'm just simply, like I said, all the spark plugs are out. So since all the spark plugs are out, I can just grab the fan blade. Ooh, come on, Betsy. There we go. And I'll just turn around 90 thousandths. And if you, I use the ATI super dampers and they're marked all the way around, you can get a tape to put on that'll mark 360 degrees all the way around a damper, by the size of it. Or when you're doing this, you could just take some white out or a white marker and you could just make 4 marks on your damper, 3 more marks from your top dead center, exactly opposite of it, and then 90 degrees on both sides, and it will serve the purpose. I just repeat that process, go through all 8 doing exactly the same thing, turn 90 degrees, set it. I like to use the poly locks for another reason, because when I set it and I lock that down, then when I run them the next time, if it's locked and I have to break it loose, then I know that it should be where it was. And if I've got a lot of extra slack or no slack at all and it's, bound up, I know something's wrong in my valve train and I need to investigate that. If you've got stop nuts, or if you've got press-in studs and not screw-in studs, there's some other variables that can be involved there where that you got to say, okay, I've got a lot of slack for some reason. Am I pulling a stud out of the head? Have I got, a stop nut that has moved on me? And so you got to look at it from that standpoint. And I know sometimes you got rules that won't let you run good valve train components, and that drives me crazy because this stuff is not expensive. Let's look at that air filter because it is the next night and it has dried out. So let's check that out. All right, so y'all check it out. You can see. And like I said, I sloshed it. Honestly, I probably sloshed it in that soapy water doing that for about 5 or 6 minutes. And then I ran the clean water and did the same thing with clean water for just 2 or 3 minutes. And looks great, 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 great. And the reason I do that like that, and then I just, like I said, I took and just slung it out, just swung it around in my hands, slung the excess water out of it, throw it up on top of the car. And this is 24 hours later and it's completely dry. And it's no issues, and I haven't tore anything up, and I haven't pushed any little cotton fibers or nothing. If you do them like this, they will last a really, really, really long time. Now, as far as the oil, of course, I just bought a huge gallon jug of K&N air filter oil because them spray aerosol cans, no thank you. That is way too expensive. I think I got this online for, I don't know, maybe $30 for the gallon. That was years ago, and it's about half full now. And then I get the little squirt bottles, and you can order these online, or I think you can get them in like Walmart or something. This is a little betadine bottle that I use, but you can get these little squirt bottles where you cut the tip off. That's what I use. And what I do, let me turn it down here where you can see it. So what I do is I start at the joint where I can know where I started from, and I just turn it up, and I just sit here and I run like it right there, and I usually will sit in a chair and play the radio and take my time, and I will just sit here and go all the way around, and I will go one way all the way around, and then I will turn around and I will flip it around where I get the other side of the pleat, and I will do it again. And what I always say is like I do this like at least the night before I go racing, where I can set the thing aside, and when I get done and it has sat for a day, I look, and because I wash it with a degreaser, I'm gonna take the dye out of the filter, you know, when I wash it, because it's in the oil itself. And if I see any light spots, you know, I'll hit them. Honestly, when I run both sides of the plate like this, I don't ever see any light spots. I mean, it's just, I don't ever see any light spots. Very rarely do I have to take and sit here and go back and hit it again. But that's all I do. And you can see, I'm not like squirting on this bottle. The way, like, you see how that's dripping there? That's about, and I just, how do I show y'all how much? You know how you get a knack for something if you just keep doing it over and over? It's like I don't even think about it, but you see how much I'm adding there? I just slide across. So I'm giving a little bit of a squirt with a squeeze with my thumb, but you can see what I'm doing there. And I'm just, it doesn't take that long. A couple of minutes, I can go the whole way around it. Just like that right there. So I do the whole air filter like that. That works really good. And then every time I run it, I go back and I do it again. So I add oil. I don't know that I add as much oil when I'm re-oiling it. So like if I run a race and there's not a lot of dirt that I can see or anything, because you know I run a pre-filter as well, and you know I'll just go back and I will just lightly hit every one of the ribs one time, and I don't even flip it around and do both. I just hit each one time, you know, and then I'll run it another race, and then I'll do that a third time, and then it's time to wash it after that, because usually at that point I can start seeing it getting some buildup on it. That's what I've always done with the K&Ns. That's the way I'm going to treat this walker as well, and hope that I get some good life out of this thing. So we got to put those spark plugs back in. We need Gapo spark plugs. Let's do that. All right, last thing I'm gonna cover here is just showing you the spark plugs that I'm switching out here on this maintenance work we're doing. I like these NGK V-Powers. I have learned I've got to be careful where I get these from. I've got where that I just get them directly from like my local parts store, O'Reilly's, is where I get them. And the reason being is that I have ordered these online, like with Amazon, and I have gotten fake ones before. You gotta be careful. There are a lot of online sellers on spark plugs, and they're knockoffs. The packaging will look very similar and everything. So be careful where you get your spark plugs from, because that can be a disaster. These are the bow tie Vortex heads, and also the stock Vortex, the 602s, the 604s, all of those 602, 604 crate motors. That's what I'm talking about, y'all. But anyway, part number on these, it's the R5724. That is the model of the plug for Vortex. And that has to do with like the thread and the reach there on the plug. That's the reason that the Vortex is different. So you can't switch between a Vortex and your other Chevrolet heads. And anyway, so it's R5724, and they got it in a -8, a -9, and a -10. The -8 is the hottest plug, and the -10 is the coldest plug. And the heat has to do with how much that ceramic tip extends out, you know, into your combustion chamber. And you want to run as hot a plug as you can, but it's limited by your compression ratio of your engine. Because this engine is an 11.5 to 1, if it was on gas, I would be on a -9 plug. And several engines that have been up at 11, 11 to 1 or more, I've always been on a -9. Probably if I was up in that 13 or 14 and I was running into pre-detonation and issues, I would go to a -10. I've never run an engine with enough compression to need a -10. But like with this engine, because I'm on E85, you go back a number hotter when you're on E85 than if you're on gasoline. So I've been running the -8s, which look absolutely perfect, look great, the ones that come out of it. I think it's the right choice for me to run the -8s. And I do know from the research that I've done and everything, I'm not a crate motor guy myself, but as far as the 602s and the 604s, everybody is running, this 5724-8. Whether they're running E85 or they're running gasoline, they're just running the -8. Of course, those engines don't have the compression ratio, of your built engines either. So just be aware. As far as gapping, so I'm going to gap this to 40,000, and I like the wheel like this that has the plane that comes up. I like to do it like that because you can slide it in. So you go down here to your small side where you're way down here at like 10 thousandths. And then you can just wiggle. Don't go crazy on this thing. You can break that ceramic easier than you realize, and you can bend this thing up. All you want to do is just slide it in, and what I do is I'm walking it like this. So I'm sitting here and I'm walking it, kind of like just walking it up that incline, because that ramps, it goes from like 10 thousandths around, and I've got a black mark that I put at 40 thousandths where I know when I get to it. And so all I do is I just put it in and I wiggle it back and forth, and kind of just work it up that plane until I get there. And then I just quit. When it gets to it, I just quit. All right? Don't do this, okay? Because you don't want to bend this electrode's position on top. You're not wanting to bend that back away. And when you do that, when you bend, so people will take it and they'll go, oh, like it right there. Don't do that. Both of those edges are going to get marred by that. And then you're twisting on this pole in this ceramic coating right here. So you're taking a chance on breaking your ceramic at the bottom. And then you're moving this bar out of position. Kind of show why I think that's important. I put it in, and then a little bit of anti-seize on the threads, because nobody wants a spark plug seized up and broke off. And put that joker in, do it 8 times, plug her back up, let her rip. All right, y'all, I just wanted to show you a little bit about the maintenance. I really wanted to show you about that air filter. I had a couple guys that was asking me about how I did the old air filters. Just threw the other stuff in here while I was at it. Hope you liked this content, what's going on here. So thumbs up if you did. Leave me a comment. I know some of y'all do it different. By all means, comment there. Go to the comments and see what people got to say about different ways they got. Some people's got some really good ideas, and I'm always trying to learn something. I will see you next time.